Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Comparting Lounge. Harald, Thorsten's already here. Brian's been back here, so let me introduce the people to you. Hi, Brian. Good to see you again. So, Brian, President CEO of Compart North America. Thanks for the great introduction. We've got Harald here, CEO and founder of Compart AG in Germany. Also likes still to develop software in his spare time. Then there's Thorsten. Brian already mentioned him, Chief Marketing Officer, as well as responsible for product management. Okay, welcome, gentlemen. So as a starter, let's have a first round of questions. So Harald, how's Compart doing in times of COVID-19?
I would say quite well. I wouldn't say that COVID makes things easier, but I think we have really gone through this pandemic so far very well. When all that started in March, we sent home almost the entire staff from one day to another, which worked perfectly well. We changed some of our business continuation plans to make sure that they still fit. And we had a very early discussion what we will do with this situation, and we came to a very simple conclusion that this pandemic will at some time go away. And we said, and what will we do in between? And we decided that we will keep on working very strong. We won't slow down. So we had absolutely no layoffs at Compart. In Germany, there's programs. The only thing that really had to close was our Comparteria, which our cafeteria in Böbling that had to be closed for some time. It's now reopened because we encourage people to come to the office if they want. But at the moment, there's about 90% of the people in Germany are working out of home with lots of video conferences. But that works perfectly well. People are extremely productive. I would never have ever believed that people working out of home might even gain productivity. And if it comes to the business itself, I said, well, Corona doesn't make it easier. We're in the lucky position that we have products that are even pushed by Corona. Not all of them. There are some products that are a little bit slower. But for this fiscal year that started in summer, we didn't plan a big growth, but we still planned a growth. And the fact that we had very good years before the Corona crisis, we even have a good year now. But the fact that we had very good years before the Corona crisis makes us very stable. We're sitting on lots of cash. So the decision to keep on is the right decision. We have developed a lot in the last couple of months. And once again, we are a strong believer that this crisis will go away at some time. We don't know when. We hope that by spring, early summer next year, things will change a lot. But at the moment, no problem. Even thank you to our customers, we don't even have problems. Our customers won't even have problems. We don't have any discontinuation of maintenance or anything. So if I did a good decision in my life 40 years ago, that was to go into the IT field. So once again, Compart is in good shape and everything is fine.
All right, thank you, Harald. So Brian, first question for you here. Given all the disruption this year, so what changes have you seen in the North American market? Okay, I'm not sure if Brian can hear us. I'm sorry about that.
Nope, I can hear you. I was just taking a quick drink there, sorry. So generally, Martin, the North American marketplace is all about digital transformation, and that's been apparent. In some use cases, there's an easy adoption path and a decision process, and in others, it tends to be fraught with paralysis by analysis. When we see a wide separation in implementation and strategy, it tends to be at the industry level. And furthermore, where those potential strategies meet complications or start to have issues in terms of becoming projects and SOWs, I think that's where a lot of those things just gain complexities or overlap decision silos. The good news is that both are improving, and organizations are becoming more and more aware that the chasm they really have to traverse here is the digital customer experience. The events and situations this year have reinforced that thought, and in some circumstances, it's really brought these priorities to the forefront. Now, where there is a clear path to improvement, I think these strategies and projects are picking up speed and at a much faster pace. As Harald mentioned, financially we are quite well. We certainly benefited from the increase in pace from these projects in our fiscal fourth quarter of last year, which was April through June. We had our second best fourth quarter ever. In fact, one of our success stories from that period we'll be presenting here tomorrow, Federated Insurance, a great case study for DocBridge and Press and how it helped them tap into their customer data and send targeted messages quickly and efficiently. Another big achievement for us during that period was winning a contract with the U.S. Department of Revenue to convert all of those wonderful IRS notices to 508 compliant or accessible documents in PDF UA that will eventually be available through their secure portal. That project has gone very well. I'm pleased to report that we secured our second contract with them just last week. So overall, Martin, I'm excited that what we are seeing is very positive movement, especially as it relates to customer communications and what we bring to the table. And as a result, we've added more sales executives to the team, and now having the ability to bring Comparting to North America and to see the attention it's already received is beyond exciting. So, very good.
Thanks a lot, Brian. So, Thorsten, first question for you here would be, what was the biggest challenge in terms of redesigning Comparting 2020 as an all-virtual event? I know we've had the, I don't want to like to call it a trial run before in the US. We've had the Comparting US in June as a virtual event. Was that helpful in any way to be prepared?
Yeah, absolutely. So we learned quite a few things during this, event that we ran in summer as a, North America only virtual event. It helped us, some of the learnings were like which platform not to use and what conferencing tool not to use and these kind of things, right? But of course, the hard part was to really make that decision back in July, I guess it was, where we said, are we gonna move Comparting to a virtual platform? Will we do some kind of hybrid event with people still traveling to Berlin, or will we, just hope that COVID will go away by winter and run the usual Comparting here in person in Germany? And we decided early on to go all virtual, and I think that paid off. But by the way, I was, as you were speaking, Brian, about the 90s and your first personal email address, I was trying to remember what my personal email address was, my first one, and I still remember it. It was a numerical email address because back then that system didn't allow alphabetic email addresses. So it was 100,1005.compuserve.com. So I think things have really changed a lot still between the 90s and today.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. So before diving a little deeper in, Harald, and asking another question to you, I would like to encourage you, our audience, to ask questions as well. So we'll have a Q&A afterwards, after this panel discussions end. So please send us your questions. So Harald, for you, looking back at the past 5 years with the industry constantly changing, which continuous developments or shifts in direction did surprise you the most with a hashtag Compart 3.0?
What we did about 5 years ago was we had a big discussion internally what to do with our products. Our products were successful, are still successful, but they were standing side by side as silos, and we thought that we have to break them into components. So we launched an initiative in development at that time, which was called CBA, Component-Based Architecture, that we worked on since 4 years right now. And I think we can say that we are almost done with that. There's still some things that are open. At that time, there was something that we entirely underestimated. That was the performance of the cloud. 4 years ago, there were not too many customers of ours that really used the cloud. I think even Europe was quite behind the States in terms of accepting the cloud. But then the cloud took over very fast, and we had to change a couple of things, not to say a lot of things, to make sure that our software runs perfectly in the cloud. And that was a surprise. That was a game changer for us. But fortunately, we took the right decisions at the right time. So it was not an entire change of the direction, but that was something that surprised me. And as of today, we are in the middle of a big transition. We'll have more on that also with Thorsten. So a good amount of new products and new projects right now are working in the cloud, and there's hardly any customer that's not asking us how to get into the cloud with Compart software. And I can promise you, we'll join you on the way into the cloud.
Right. Any comments from you, Thorsten or Brian?
Well, I mean, from a product's point of view, I very much agree with Harald. It is interesting that sort of, I believe, I wasn't part of Compart back then, but when Compart was started more than 25 years ago, how many years, Harald?
28 and a half now.
28 and a half years ago. So part of the DNA of Compart was always to use APIs to have kind of well-structured software, the famous toolkit, etc., right? And there was a trend several years ago where modular components-based software and the idea of people kind of assembling software solutions based on these components got a little bit out of fashion, and best of breed wasn't really what the analysts were encouraging people to do. There was this big fear of, I need a single throat to choke if something goes wrong. I don't want to have people finger pointing one at each other, etc. Now, today, fortunately for us, we kept this component-based DNA, and in fact, many of our products are moving even further into that component-based direction. And B, this approach of best of breed is very much in fashion right now. In fact, when you listen to analysts like Gartner, and we'll have a presentation on this topic by one of my colleagues, I believe tomorrow. When you listen to the analysts, right, they say, in a world where we have a cloud-centric architecture that's built on well-defined microservices that you can scale independently, that uses a sort of standardized API approach using RESTful web services, messaging technology like Kafka, what have you. Right, so where all these interfaces become more clearly defined and interchangeable, right? The data formats become more standardized, right? That's where you can go back to the approach of best of breed and look at the business problem that you have to solve specifically in your situation. And rather than buying a big monolithic, massive piece of software with all the cost and complexity related to it, you just take, individual components and assemble them in a way that they work best for you. And they call it packaged business capabilities. So there is a new term for it, but fortunately that works very well with what we are doing at Compart. And we'll talk a lot about this today and tomorrow.
All right, thank you.
I agree as well. It's I can hear the delay a bit, but it's funny, going back, not even that long ago, but going back 5-6 years ago, maybe 7. I remember talking to large organizations, and the cloud was something that they wouldn't touch. It wasn't anything that they felt trustworthy in. And just from that short span of time between now and then, a complete 180 in the marketplace. In fact, a year and a half ago, one of the largest insurance organizations that there is said to me that they only ingest software now in the cloud, and this is where the future is going, or already is in many cases. So the fact that we are delivering these strategies in our software and our solutions goes a long way.
All right, thanks for the comment, Brian. So I would have asked you the next question anyway. So Brian, where do you see customer communication headed, and how do these times of uncertainty impact that path?
Well, as I mentioned previously, Martin, everything that we've seen here is pointing towards a significant investment in digital customer experience, and the driving influence there is, I think, the change in environment, the change in what expectations now are. Some of that is a direct reflection of uncertainty. A lot of that has to do with a change in the structure of our lives. Human beings are structured animals. We all want to eat at a certain time, sleep in a certain place, see and do things that we are familiar with. I could gladly and blindly continue to pay that monthly cable or quarterly insurance bill if I'm happy and busy, but force me out of my element, lock me in my house, and lock me up with my family for weeks on end, and there's no telling what I might do. No, but seriously, there was a paper published by McKinsey and Company this past October, and I think that there are some people from McKinsey here with us today, or over these today and tomorrow. But essentially, the premise was how these different behaviors were being displayed across different countries. It discussed the shock to brand loyalty, and that widely consumers are trying different shopping behaviors and expressing high intent. I think it was like 75% in the United States in acting on that behavior. If you can imagine a situation where consumers were only 25% likely to be loyal to brand, product, or service, and I don't think the psychology here is simply idle hands. It's multifaceted. During this time, call centers have been affected by COVID-19. They're operating with limited staff, so customer service call times increase, satisfaction sharply decreases. Generally, responses and accurate feedback from big companies sometimes feels like it's hard to come by. And I think the big reason here is that the digital revolution has taught us all that the customer experience bar has been raised. In this app-driven world, the relationship or relationship bar has been set. It's been set by companies like Uber and Grubhub and Amazon and eBay. These are all internet-based companies, not traditional industries that will struggle with loyalty more and more as they're weighted down with legacy data, multiple legacy systems, and bureaucratic red tape. No, I think that the companies in these industries see the writing on the wall and know what needs to be done to reestablish value for the brand. But it's more than rebranding or campaigning. As I mentioned earlier, organizations need to send messaging and receive information in the same vehicle. They need to utilize their data more effectively, and I think the first one there in their respective industries will probably win.
Right. Thanks, Brian. I'm not sure if there's any comments from this side. If not, I would like to follow up to the question I was asking Harald before. So, Thorsten, let's just recap from a product perspective. What were the biggest milestones in the last year's Comparting event?
So yeah, I mean, looking back at the last year and what happened, so besides COVID and all the special circumstances that we were experiencing, it's very hard to kind of identify one milestone or one kind of event that was most significant. But of course, when we maybe it's fair to say let's kind of distinguish between two things that happened at Compart. One was the development of some new products, very exciting products that are taking us down the path of being fully cloud capable, embracing digital communication channels, doing a lot of data-driven stuff like DocBridge Gear or DocBridge Impress. And especially with DocBridge Gear, I believe we made major progress this year. So going back a year ago, 2 years ago, we were discussing DocBridge Gear at Comparting, and I remember we did very nice demos back then. For instance, I recall last year we had this use case for DocBridge Gear, which was focused on inbound digital communication, where we took in emails and we analyzed these emails and pushed them into a digital help desk system, assigned it to the agents and that kind of stuff, right? 2 years ago, we had shown an integration with Salesforce.com, which was very much in an experimental stage, I would say, back then. Today, you will see that this solution, for instance, this product has become a product. So it's not an experimental thing that somebody built in the lab, but it's something that is in production with a customer today, and I find that really exciting. So the new and fancy stuff is really making good progress and is maturing. But on the other hand, we have the mature and still somewhat fancy stuff that we are working on. So there are several products that we are continuously improving, whether it's DocBridge Delta, which sees continuous improvements, whether it's DocBridge Spool, a completely new product that we had launched this year that is sort of a printing hub, if you will. So it, we called it Spool initially, but it kind of almost grew out of its naming by now, because it gives you the capability to take in print streams in various formats from various sources and then distribute it into different output streams and different devices and manage that whole setup, right? So it's it's the combination of the new and exciting things that are happening, but us continuing to build on the, let's say, on the more traditional DNA of Compart.
Right. You will see a difference in our lab session, which was always very important for us. We said we will, on one hand, we will show what we've done. On the other side, we will show what we will do. And the lab session was always part of the lab session was always some demos. We don't have those demos at the lab session anymore, for a very simple reason, because we have lots of customer success stories that show what we have shown in the past. So that's why we said the future is here. Things that we had to do ourselves as demos are now customer projects. And that's the big change. And for me, it's extremely exciting to see that we get more and more inquiries. That's a big challenge for Compart, but also a big chance that we get more and more inquiries that are not that do not compare to the projects we've done in the last 10 years. Of course, we will still do the projects with our customers. We will never lose our DNA. We are a company that knows how to print. We're a company that knows how to convert data streams. We will always We will always keep that DNA, but it's extremely interesting to see that with the new components that we have, we can cover a much bigger footprint. And we see that at our website. We get more and more traffic on the website. We get more and more people that are asking us things that we wouldn't have even thought about when we developed our software components.
All right, thank you, Harald. So Brian, I would like to bring you back in here again with a question on what roadblocks or obstacles do you see organizations having as it pertains to improving customer communication?
Well, I think that, they're all different for different organizations, but a few of them that I've already mentioned. I think it's easy when organizations start small or start with a project in mind where it's a particular department or communication or initiative. And once you start with these things in mind, you can grow from that very easily. But I think some of the roadblocks that are quite evident out there are when organizations try to not necessarily bite off more than they can chew, but take it all on at once. And ultimately, customer communication and the brand strategy and how these things are delivered, the messaging that goes out, the information that comes back, the legislation around all of these things, well, they tend to cross a lot of different decision silos, and that's a massive roadblock. So that's a big one as it pertains especially to larger organizations trying to do it all at once. I think the other roadblock or obstacle is, I also mentioned this earlier, is how do they utilize data? The courage to use the data. For many, many years, organizations have obtained data on their customers, their behaviors, their buying styles, but not many organizations have incorporated those data points into their customer communication strategies or messaging. And that's a massive misstep, because that behavioral information, those data points, are what's going to make that personalized message really impactful for those individuals. And that's what's going to eventually build brand value and build those relationships.
Right, thanks, Brian. So moving along the timeline, we've now talked about the past a little bit and the present. So one question regarding the future for you, Harald especially, is there any new rising technology that Compart will definitely further evaluate?
We will definitely further evaluate a lot of things. One thing is, and maybe that's a good question to cover that. Compart has always been very strong with open standards. I think one of the reasons why we get very good along with the requirements of our customers is that we always had open standards. We always used non-proprietary data. We were telling people use XML, use JSON, use Unicode. That helps a lot. What we see is that the way we have to look at data will change. Compart has a very document-centric background. We see more and more projects where it's all about data. So the document is at some stage, yes, we need the document, so could you please produce the document? But the way we look at data will change, and we'll do a couple of things in that area. You've heard me saying in the past that I'm a big fan of semantic web, that we will be able to get access to data that sits somewhere on the web that might not even be our business data. It might be other people's data that we might want to use in our business processes. So that's one area. The second area where we think we'll have to do more is the further we get away from batch processing. I mean, Compart was very much, we did give us 1 million AFP pages and we convert them into 1 million PDF pages, and everybody was happy. I mean, that's not that's still what our customers are doing with our software, but that's not driving the world, and that's definitely not driving new projects. The more we move from batch-oriented black box kind of software into let's say business case-oriented software, the more we have to do with the people, with the business processes. I'm sure that you have seen in the past years that Compart has added a whole lot of UIs. We didn't need UIs to run batch jobs. We have now a good amount of our development is UI development, and you will see some of that. I think we'll add more in order to also be able to be part of a business process that is an interactive process within the business, where we might have a workplace for a clerk to do something. So that's always also something that we are looking at the moment.
Right, thank you, Harald. I'm not sure if Thorsten, Brian, you would like to comment. Yes, please, go ahead.
Well, I would like to add one aspect, and that again relates to the way things are going, not just industry-wide, but with technology in general, that it's not just Compart using open standards and propagating open APIs, but a lot of other people in related businesses are doing similar things. And that's very exciting, because you can combine services from Compart with services from other vendors and create additional value and things that we couldn't even imagine ourselves, or that would just be, too far off of our, main business focus for us to spend time on it. To give you an example, for instance, when we went through the preparation for this event, and we had to deal with different languages and different time zones and all of this, right? We had a massive challenge kind of getting all the presentations that people provided beforehand that were recorded in different languages, get that translated into English or French or German from the original format, right? Now, there is cool technology out there like Amazon Transcribe, for instance, which is an REST API that you can use to send a video file, right? Like what we're looking at right now, and you run it, and what you get back is a transcription of what you just have seen and recorded, right? Now, why am I talking about this? When you think about an insurance workflow, for instance, right, you might have a customer of an insurance driver, right, running into a car accident, and people are taking photos today. So, well, it was one of the challenges of 2-3 years ago to incorporate the HEIC image format that Apple introduced. But now people are not just taking pictures of the accident. People are getting, when I look at myself, I become more and more lazy, right? So why not just record a video and, speak to the video what happened, rather than typing it up and sending it to the insurance? Now, that would be a use case, right, where you could integrate that API with Compart's technology in order to do a transcript of that document and, turn, still images of the video and the transcript into a PDF document that you can archive in more conventional means, right? And there are thousands, literally thousands of cool examples that we could think of from, translation over transcription and sentiment analysis and all these kind of things, where there are APIs out there and we can consume them without having to spend years on developing them ourselves. I find that very exciting.
Brian has described quite nicely that the way people handle data, treat data, collect data. When Gartner a couple of years ago brought up the new big five things, one was big data, and I always thought that Compart is not in the big data business, and in fact we are not. But we now start using technology to help people collect production data, audit track is a very good example for that. And then people want to build any kind of reports, and then we combine that with Impress to combine those data. So we're with all these new components, and maybe Brian, you must help me. We have this internal joke from Christoph where he says that if you have enough amino acids, is that the right English? Maybe help me out.
Yes, exactly.
With that. Yeah. So if you have
those
enough,
are the components, the amino acids, the building blocks.
Yeah, if you have enough of them at some stage, you will automatically get live, and that describes it quite nicely how we feel at the moment, because we have so many exciting components that we need for some very specific project in output management, but we see that we can also use it for something entirely different, and that is very exciting.
Yes, I completely agree. And that segment, I'm going to need a clip of that, because as Harald was talking, there was a woman in the next room next door wiping down a countertop, and it looked like she was polishing your head, Harald. So that's going to be terrific video for later on.
I wasn't even able to see. Thanks, Brian. Okay, all right. So we'll go to Q&A session shortly. There's already been a couple of questions we collected. So one question, Thorsten, I had for you as a follow-up to the question we had before. It's like, what else is going on apart from DocBridge Gear? I know you've mentioned already some stuff, but maybe there's even more going on currently.
Well, there is a lot of stuff going on, and maybe that's the good aspect of COVID, right? Because as Harald said, people are still pretty damn productive, and we get a lot of stuff done, and we can focus very much on a couple of things. But I would say yes. So major focus, of course, is around component-based architecture with DocBridge Gear as kind of the base layer of infrastructure on top of which you can kind of execute your processes and workflows and all of this. And we'll talk about this later in separate sessions, but that's really exciting because this combines the DNA of Compart, so kind of being able to convert, modify, extract data from documents with very much data-driven workflows, composition, etc., and being able to pull in these external services I spoke about before. So that's really exciting stuff. But besides everything that happens around Gear, I already mentioned DocBridge Spool. Of course, I highly recommend the session that's going to take place tomorrow, I believe, about what the Compart R&D team worked on last year. So, there is a release every month, which brings improvements to the base technology of Compart that propagates into every product that is out there in the market. So that's something I would highly recommend to attend this session. And then, of course, on the UI side, a lot of things have happened. We have completely reworked the DocBridge Impress Designer, for instance. We are right now doing an integration of many of these products into the standard UI environment of Compart called DocBridge Central, which will make sure that you have a completely consistent and coherent user experience, being able to access the same resources from every application, leveraging Resource Director and these kind of technologies. So lots of things that we'll also hear about and talk about in the sessions that are going to come today and tomorrow.
All right, thank you very much, Thorsten. So gentlemen, I would like now to spend the last 5 minutes of this session with Q&A. So there's 2 questions that have been asked. So I'm going to read them to you. Brian, feel free to read them in your Slido window as well. So customer delivery choices and preferences continue to mature as we experience new options across our brand interactions. How is Compart adapting to support, on the one hand, communication preference management, to on-demand delivery of content?
I mean, we address that by, first of all, by having clear interfaces, and Thorsten was saying that sometimes we might even use best of breed. It's not that if in a Compart solution as of today, we can easily integrate other components that do things better than we can do. For example, we're just discussing internally whether we would have a generic interface to multi-channel delivery to messaging services, which at the moment you can do that with Compart by a little bit of scripting. We just discussed whether we provide an interface to one of the systems that's out there. So we will constantly make sure that we will be able to interface to other systems. And once again, component-based architecture makes that a lot easier.
And, especially when it comes to being able to produce content on demand, right? One key element is to be able to synchronously and in a transactional fashion process data, turn it into a piece of communication like an email or even a printed document or text message or whatever. And that's exactly one of the key elements behind Gear to be able to do this. And what was the first part of the question? I forgot.
Well, first one was communication preference management. Second was on-demand delivery of content.
So communication preference management.
We can provide access to databases, provide databases. We wouldn't, at the moment, we don't have a dedicated product that would do that. But I think it's maybe it's not fair to say a piece of cake, but it would be relatively simple to do that. At the end of the day, we might have to do a little bit of development with our customers. And be careful, it's most bigger customers typically have systems in place that we should adopt to our interface with rather than bringing our own device or solution.
So that, looking at it not from a product management point of view, but more from a marketing point of view, I would very much support that approach actually. So I wouldn't look at our products as something like marketing automation or something like this. And I would like to keep the customer preference management aspect in a product that serves marketing automation, for instance, right? Do it in one central point and not distribute this across multiple products. And we could then interface with the marketing automation or get data fed in from marketing automation and turn that into communication and products. And,
okay.
Yeah.
Thanks again. Okay, so it's time for one more question, and I'm asking right to you, Brian. So I have seen, it's an anonymous question, I have seen several publications on leaders in the CCM marketplace, and I don't think I've seen Compart there. Any reason?
This is a difficult question to ask in an environment like this. First of all, I think you have to consider each study separately, right? There could be a lot of different variables involved. I certainly can't speak for any of the analyst groups, and I've only had limited experiences. I've been with Compart for just over a year now, but within that year, we have been asked to participate in a couple studies, but at a cost. The old adage is true that you pay for what you get, and getting into an advertising war with a billion-dollar company like some of our competitors in hopes of securing a favorable outcome is not something that I'm very interested in doing. But that said, I also don't want to pose a one-sided view of this, and certainly don't want to make any enemies today. I do really like it when people write nice things about us. Over the years, there have been lawsuits, and they have driven policies on these things. So I'm not even sure if the company size has things to do with it in terms of who is incorporated. But long story short, there are a lot of different considerations that go into those things. So I don't think it's as black and white as it might seem.
All right, thanks a lot, Brian. And with regard to timing, I would like to say a big thank you to all of you gentlemen. I'll catch up with you later. And I would like to lead over to our first presentation of the day. Next up, we're going to have Matt Swain of DocBridge Financial Services. Matt's going to talk about digital transformation, aligning business priorities with customer expectations. He's a managing director at DocBridge and the practice lead communications consulting. Please welcome Matt Swain.